Ladies and gentlemen, you are being graced by the presence of your king, the king of New England, BMT, and you are listening to the Three Count Podcast.
Do you wanna get live with me? Do you really wanna ride with me? I'm in the club, baby, grind on me.
Welcome everyone to another great edition of the Three Count Podcast presents Now Entering, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And with this being season 5 and our 400 and something episode, I would just hope you say it with me, I am your Sherpa. Because like you're a tribal chief, acknowledge me. But it's never about me. It's about who's entering the ring. So who's entering the ring? You can find this person at Chaotic. You can find him at Rad Pro, WC, EWA Maine. You can find him at RWA United New England Ring Gladiators. And you can find him at Fight Life. He is royalty. He is the definition of pristine. He is the king of the New England area. He is BMT.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh hell yeah, man! We ran into each other in a couple different places, and most recently when we ran into each other in WWE, I was like, oh man, I've been meaning to bring him on to the podcast for so long. I was like, I just gotta make it happen. So I was so glad when you said, yeah, I want to come on. I was like, let's go. No, but first thing I want to say, how you been, bro?
I've been good, man. Life is really busy. The holidays in my household could be a pretty busy time. And the schedule is pretty gnarly too, you know. Generally speaking, we always have the rule during the holidays. We like to keep it kind of, that's when we take our break the most, just because, the year usually beats us up, but, we're still rocking and rolling. So, I'm doing good, man. I woke up this morning. Hopefully I'll do the same thing tomorrow. So that's half the battle.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing in life too, is that like when you wake up, and it's something like Chris Van Vliet says it all the time, right? You find 3 things that you're grateful for, and then you just enjoy that, and then you take it with you throughout the day. And I think about it too, where I wake up and I'm like, man, like it's another day where I get up and I get to enjoy this atmosphere and enjoy this day and whoever's going to be present inside of it. And I try to take more wins than I do losses, but I do appreciate all my wins, and then I have to learn from all my lessons.
Absolutely.
Yo,
Couldn't agree more.
So let me ask, man, BMT, how did this come along?
The name?
Yeah, well, the name and like the whole persona. Like, I want to know about the whole story.
The name was legitimately sitting in a Subway restaurant with a buddy of mine eating an Italian BMT. Is profanity allowed?
Yes, 100%.
I bullshit you not. I was eating the sandwich and we were trying to think of wrestling names. And the one thing I said was, I like the idea of acronyms because I think it's cheaper to get an acronym on a t-shirt than it is a full name. So he looked at me and said, hey, just call yourself BMT like the sandwich. And this was in 2006. So I spent my Friday night coding my MySpace to have a random name generator, and I just put BMT and got Brendan Michael Thomas.
Yeah,
the character is kind of I was really just myself, and it was a little weird because I'm a reserved person in a sense. When we came back this time around, we developed, we became the king and queen, and we developed these personas just because we honestly felt that we were the most consistent thing going, and that no one had the consistency and the time spent and the time together like me and my wife did. So when I think about people like that, when I think of couples like that, I think of your king and your queen. So it was kind of if the crown fits, you wear it, and we're wearing the hell out of them. So,
I mean, it's facts. It's facts. I mean, you guys just came off that killer match with Sydney Akeem, and I was watching. I saw the highlights, and I was like, "Oh my god, bro! I'm so hyped for them." But to be fair, like you said, y'all been running this area for a while, so it's cool to see people I get the chance to like sit down with and talk with and learn from them. And I know kind of a little bit about like the lineage, because I tell people I just moved up here probably like 18 months ago from Maryland,
Yeah.
so like I was getting familiar with the DMV scene, and I'm up here learning about the New England scene. But then when I go back and like research people and learn about where they're coming from and what they're doing, you can't sometimes help but be in awe of like what you're looking at.
It's definitely New England is like just the hidden treasure of independent wrestling. There's so many talented people just in this five-state epicenter on this part of the country. It's insane. When you mentioned Sidney Akeem, when I go to Connecticut, I run into guys like Ichiban and Dustin Waller. When I when I'm in Massachusetts, I run into guys like Seabass Finn or Ricky Smokes. When I go to Rhode Island, there's the JT Duns and the Trigger the OGs. There are so many people. Maine's got aggro. There's just so many people, and it's just all in this little pocket of the country. And it's literally insane because I'm a firm believer if you don't get better by working in New England, you just don't know what you're doing because there are so many good opportunities to get good. And there are so many opportunities to elevate your game because of such a competitive nature, because the talent out there is just so immense and it's in such a large quantity
Yeah.
just in New England alone.
Yeah, I think of because I think that, and I love the fact that you call this like the like hidden, like a hidden gem, because when it comes like in the DMV, I mean, there's not very many like promotions, right? So the wrestlers that do come out and come up, like you can you can see the grind difference. I don't want to call it that because I know some people will probably catch some heat from some people back down in Maryland who are like, "Oh, you don't think we work hard?" Like it's not what I'm saying at all. Okay, what I'm saying is that there's just when I see guys that are on a poster like four days in a row from like whether they're at like a wrestling open, a fight life, then they go to something like Rad Pro for like a Sunday morning, or even on that night before they're at a chaotic event, like the you're getting a lot of matches in, and there's like a big difference between a person who works 4 times in a month and a person who works 4 times in a week. And it's like when you see that contrast and that difference in like the grind, you're gonna learn. You're gonna know how to do things in certain situations. There'll be certain experiences that you're gonna have that some other people aren't gonna get. And it's no disrespect. It's just this area has so many people that, like you said, are striving for that top brass ring, that they're putting in all the work. So it's like you can't be upset when someone says, "Yeah, you're good." You're just, when you're in New England, you're kind of just, I don't want to say average, like, but there's you could tell like where the elite people are, because when you look at someone like Christian Casanova, right? I mean, for those who know, like, Carmelo Hayes is blown up, like, and there are levels. Like you grind again, like you say, you get all the way to the top, and you mentioned someone like Ricky Smokes for you know coming off the WWID, Brad Baylor, he's again in this area. Aaron Rourke is another name that wrestles in the New England area. You see it, three names that are attached to that. There's a reason for it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's so funny. Like Ricky Smokes getting ID'd. I put on my Facebook. I said there's good, and then there's Ricky Smokes good. You know, like he's a prime example of why you have to. When you come here, you have to step correct because there is a mess load of talent. I mean, the last chaotic show we just did in Watertown last week, him and Seabass Finn went out there in the main event and honestly had a match of the year quality match. Like it was insane. Seabass Finn is another guy who I got to wrestle earlier in the year, and I remember pulling him aside after the match and just telling him, "You're getting so smooth. Just the evolution between when I first wrestled you in February compared to what I'm seeing in, the day after Thanksgiving, which is only a, 9 month difference. It's this area pushes people because if you are one of those wrestlers who wrestle once a month and think it's cool to tell your friends that you're a professional wrestler and you don't do the grind and you're not trying to work, the bell will ring and we'll all notice that. And, in this era, you have to put the work in, you have to do it consistently, you have to do it repetitiously because there's a lot of talented people out there. And again, the bell has to ring, and it's really easy to get exposed in New England. Let me tell you, real easy.
Yeah, it's definitely something I've noticed where it's like, I want to like even for me, like I said, I'm up here like 18 months now, and like I'm not on a lot of shows like in the New England area. I'm down more. I do travel down to like the PA area and into the Jersey
Mhm.
and work. So I mean, like I still trying to hone on my craft, but then again, like I also don't. The one thing that a lot of people do kind of take not seriously, right, is their ring conditioning. So you definitely can see when people get blown and tired and stuff like that. So I definitely think that it's important to like continue to grind and work. And there's only so much, and this is for me to also say to myself, there's only so much conditioning you can do before ring conditioning has to be the thing that you have to do because once you get tired in the ring, like it shows everywhere.
Yeah, no. So I always tell, I help out at a local wrestling school on Mondays, where I teach the class, and I always preach to the students there because it was preached to me when I was trained in Connecticut by Slick Wagner Brown at the Texas Train School. Um, there's in shape and then there's in ring shape. They're two different things. I mean, you could be like, you can be an avid runner, you could be a marathon runner, you could be you could be a triathlete. Here's the difference between running a marathon and being in a wrestling room. When I start running a marathon, I don't stop half a mile in and take a back bump on the track.
Right.
When a wrestling ring, there's going to be several times I'm going to have to stop what I'm doing and purposely throw myself backwards, forward, to the side, or over something or under something. So it is extremely critical because, again, the bell rings every time. It does not change. It is the one thing that is constant in wrestling. The bell has to ring. And if you are not going out there and delivering on all levels, no one's going to want to pay to see anyone who's, huff and win 2 minutes into a match. It's our job to consistently convince people to spend their money every single month to sometimes see the same roster 12, 13, 14, 15 times a year in the same building, or the same buildings in a loop. We have to be able to give them something, which means we have to dedicate a little bit of work. You mentioned Christian Casanova, Carmelo Hayes. Christian was my last match in 2016. I was 300 pounds. I had a I had a messed up back. And this is the time when like you have like Casanova and like Flip Gordon. Um, it was insane. The new kids that are coming out, Dijak. It was just insane. Everyone that was coming out. And honestly, you realize that the next evolution of wrestlers in New England were literally going to be emphasizing the athletic portion or the athlete part of what we do. Um, I mean, obviously, I'm not 300 pounds anymore. Um, but it was something that when we came back in 2022, I realized, I said, hey, listen, if I can't keep up, there's no business in me being here because these guys are just going to leave me in the dust and never look back. So it's an extremely critical aspect of what we do, especially if you want to do it successfully in this area.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, the best part about it is what I love about your character too is the character work. Like, you clearly put a lot of time into building your persona in the world. And, I think one thing that I was able to do was, I have a friend, he's actually the other half of this podcast, uh, who he was trained theatrically, like, and he went to college in New York and then tried to get jobs in, Los Angeles. But he always came to me with all these crazy work exercises and stuff like that to help build the world up around because, while yes, we have to be in shape and we have to be athletic, we also have to remember like there's a performance aspect to it that you should know and be able to do and convey, whether it's verbally or non-verbally. So I guess where I'm going to go with this is just kind of see how did you how did you create the world and what are you doing to help continue to evolve the world?
So the world was created. That's exactly what we did. Several times I try to come up with a character or build a mystique of what BMT was and what Ariel was too. And we just realized we need to be these characters that live in our world. We took essentially, we're big Game of Thrones fans. So if you watch the show, Westeros is their world. They live within their world. They rule and they act and they battle within their world. So that's what we decided. Hey, if we say we're the king and the queen, we're the king and queen of our realm, our world. So how would we act if we were running our world and our world was the only one out there? So when we were developing that and we were really focusing on that, it was more of the presentation, more of the perception. We tried little things here, different looks here and there, and it was really honestly when we got to chaotic wrestling, and Chase Del Monte, the owner of the company, said, "Hey, you guys need more to this. You need to put a name to this. You need a different presentation." That's when the Monarchy name came up. That's when the new music came out. And then down in Rhode Island in RWA, for T Phoenix and his crew, we really, really, really put a huge emphasis on presentation. So much they had their biggest show of the year, Legacy, back in August. Over 500 people attended, which was the biggest crowd they've ever had to watch a live show for them. And we did a theatrical entrance with full size thrones and peasants and flower girls, and it was very theatric. So when we were developing these characters and how we treat these characters is, as you mentioned before, we are walking, talking, living theater. If I realized a long time ago that we are in the business of retaining business. And I know that sounds weird, but again, we have to convince an audience to come see us over and over and over. So if I'm presenting the same thing over and over, I'm running the risk that I'm going to tire out or bore my audience. So if I look at my role as theater, the theater always changes. The show always changes. There's always a tweak. There's always a modification to enhance the experience. And that's what we do with the monarchy and the king and queen character. I will tell you, 2025 is going to be a much bigger year in a sense because we are putting more emphasis on the spectacle and the presentation. Because at the end of the day, you don't call yourself the king and queen and then come out looking like Creator Wrestler 1 and 2 from SmackDown versus Raw. It's just one of those things. So coming up with those, it was very much looking around and saying, what is everybody not doing? And to me, it was always the theatrics. Like, let's do a big entrance. Let's have the custom music. Let's have new gear all the time. Let's have a new look. Let's never be caught doing the same thing twice. Let's always keep them guessing. It's just the constant evolution of who we are and adapting to where we are. You said you were down at United by One doing that show. That was a very, very different crowd compared to when we go do chaotic shows or we do RWA shows. So it's adapting and morphing these characters and these presentations to connect with each audience. It takes time, it takes dedication, it takes a lot of effort, but it's worth it. And it's working, obviously, because we're getting noticed. We're having a lot of opportunities. And you see a lot of us around. We're very consistent in this area. And, it's only going to go up from here.
Yeah, and so I like to call it variance. So obviously from like the MCU world, that's what I think about it. Like when you're adapting your character to different crowds, it's just a different variant. It all has like a similar theme to it, but it's just how you present it differently. Like I know when I wrestle down in Maryland and I'm with my friends who rep the group called Pure Ignorance, I it's more Red Dog, as if like he was a mercenary who grew up in Los Angeles and has more of a West Coast feel to him. The attitude, everything changes, right? When it goes to wrestling at there's a show I wrestled in Pennsylvania. I think of it as like this is a place where I get to be a little bit more goofy, a little bit more funny. So what if what if Red Dog was more like Deadpool, you know? So I think about how to aspect and like to change everything and morph it, but it's all same. It's all in the same stream, and I like that you had just mentioned that you're always constantly adapting and changing and figuring out, tweaking, you know, what's going to work here and there, and then you just understand like how the crowd flows with you in particular. So it's cool to see that aspect of it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a very it so I was very lucky because I sat under a lot of learning trees, where I got to learn how to become a real good wrestler in the ring, but then I also got to really focus on the get an education kind of on the production side and the character side. Um, Guy who wrestles out of Rhode Island, you see him everywhere. He has his hand in pretty much a lot of the things that you see. Jose Perez, he was the one who really got me to look at it's not just about what we do within the confines of the ring, it's about the presentation. It's the whole idea where the match starts when you walk through the curtain, not when the bell rings. So how do you carry yourself? How are you presented? How do you make the presentation of yourself differentiate from the people in the audience? Because those people in the audience are coming to see somebody they think that are larger than life. And it's really hard to think that somebody's larger than life if the person paying to see you thinks you're just an average Joe. And the presentation and how you execute that presentation is very critical. And I think it's something that I was always missing younger in my career because I always thought it was about moves, 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 moves. And when I really took a step back and said, hey, I'm coming back into this business, I'm 34 years old, I'm not getting younger. You know, the guys that were wrestling on average are in their early 20s, you know? So it's one of those things. How can I, compensate for the fact that I'm not getting any younger while still being able to be on par with with this newer generation? And it was very much the character, the presentation, and how we were executing that.
I think it's important, like, you know, for those who can go out there and like just do killer moves, right? By all means, wonderful, and I applaud those guys who can do like a 450 splash or a shooting star press, or you know they can hit like the craziest moves. I think to myself whenever like I was growing up, I thought about my characters and like who were people that I was like attracted to, and you know guys like Mr. Perfect or guys like you know Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, right? And I know Shawn had some aspects of him that was able, like flying wise. I think about those guys in the wrestling business who had great characters. Razor Ramon, perfect example, a guy who really didn't have to do a lot, but had a huge, larger life persona. Eddie Guerrero, another one who could handle anything, right? And I think about like aspect of like theater, like what characters stuck with me and why did they stick with me, right? Whether it was someone like Doc Holliday, you know, Val Kilmer in Tombstone, to obviously Ryan Reynolds currently would be like the person that I would say I kind of mirrored my whole wrestling character around, you know, around the Deadpool aspect of it, where it's just constant jokes and getting beat up, but still coming back and fighting. I think about great characters and things like that, and that sticks with me. Like you could go through and I poke fun. I think about like Die Hard, you know, it's like McClane is like you see him in every movie. Like Bruce Willis's character, you see him in every movie, whether it's Passenger 57 or you see him in some aspect of another, like any Rock movie. Sorry, Dwayne, I love you, but you know, Bruce Willis did it first. But I think about like his character is in literally John McClane is in every single action movie. I'm like, yeah, I remember John, and that's why I like Die Hard. It's also a Christmas movie for those who trying to argue that point.
Absolutely a Christmas movie. 150% agree. I had this argument with somebody today, and I literally want to throw a stapler at their head when they told me Die Hard is not a Christmas movie, it's an action movie. And I was like, I just hope you just stop breathing now because it's just ridiculous. It's a Christmas movie, guys. If it's set in Christmas time, it's a Christmas movie. Like,
I
no
that's
one
what I
cares.
try to tell people too, man. I'm like, look, Batman Returns is a Christmas movie. Michael Keaton, the whole movie takes place over Christmas time. Like it is a Christmas movie.
Exactly. I'm not arguing with you, man. Absolutely. It's funny that you say that because um like I look at a lot of cinema and film, and that's where I get my idea of what a good guy is and what a bad guy is. Like to me, you mentioned Marvel. To me, the ultimate good guy is a Steve Rogers, a Captain America, who is for the people, by the book. And if he ever strays away from his original convictions, it's only for the betterment of the greater good or the
Yep.
greater cause. He's willing to sacrifice, in a sense, his beliefs and his morals to an extent in order to, guarantee the survival of those who are counting on him. But then when I think of a heel, and, some people will get this reference, other people won't, especially, depending on what they remember from wrestling in the early 2000s. When I think of a heel in wrestling, and I kind of tie it back to cinema, I think of Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men, where he was just this ruthless assassin who knew that his only meaning in life was to be pure evil. He did not want to be your friend. He did not want, his job in life was to end other people's lives and make them miserable and be the heel. And that's what he was good at. And he knew he was good at it. So why try to do anything else, with his life other than be this evil, maniacal sociopath? Now, I'm not encouraging sociopaths in wrestling, but that's the general idea. Taking these things and taking these these inspirations from different places. Like, we base our character a lot off of Game of Thrones, and, for example, you mentioned Die Hard. When I first started doing the King character, I was like, oh, my voice doesn't sound very kingly. And I told my wife, I said, hey, I got to learn an accent. And I remember saying, I'm going to be Jeremy Irons in Die Hard with a Vengeance. I just think that's a great accent, but it's pulling those inspirations from everywhere. And the reason I made the No Country for Old Men references, when Chris Jericho changed his character in the early 2000s, or mid first part of the decade of 2000, that was what was his inspiration. He took some from, Nick Bockwinkel back in the day, but a lot of his slow, methodical, make you wait, never yell, so you always have to pay attention, was from characters like, in that movie. So very critical that us as professional wrestlers, we take our inspiration in and our take our inspiration to grow and develop these characters from everywhere, not just from this single lane or this one-dimensional um area. We have to expand, we have to grow, we have to be, in a sense, never ending.
Yeah.
So it's huge, it's very, very huge. So developing characters, it's all about, hey, where can I get inspiration from that's not in a wrestling ring, or not on a microphone in a wrestling show? What else can I do that I can make it believable? I can't fly, I can't walk through walls, I can't have laser shoot out of my eyes, so that shoots down a lot of the movies that I can look at. But there's a lot of things in pop culture and in my everyday life. There's people I encounter in my everyday life, talking to them at the grocery store, and their tone and their inflection and the way they carry themselves and the way they look at you if you try to talk to them. You pull it from everywhere. So it's constant
Yeah.
inspiration and brainstorming.
No, 100%. Like I know, like for me, like the idea behind like we'll call it West Coast Red Dog because that's what all my friends address it as. When it comes to like West Coast Red Dog, like it's a straight pull from Interscope Records in the '90s, aka Death Row. Like I'm a big, was a massive Dr. Dre fan. Like I'm a massive Snoop Dogg fan. I love listening to Tupac. Like so a lot of stuff comes from like that era, like Above the Rim, right? Like we talk about Blood In, Blood Out. Like we all those movies that came from that '90s era. Like all that stuff straight pulls from a lot of that region. And then the attitude, the persona, the carry, and then like I mentioned before, like when it comes to like I wear like an all red suit, so it looks just like Deadpool. It's a direct pull from Deadpool, like the attitude, the quirkiness. And then the other part too is like I have an all black suit that I wear, and it's Hannibal King from Blade Trinity. Like I continue to grab, like you said, grab different eras. I have a pair of red and black camo pants, right? And I wear a beanie, not because it's, it's a straight bull from Rey Mysterio, because when Rey was without his mask, like that was kind of the thing that he did. So and I try to change like the quirkiness, and like you said, like when you're pulling from different also different media, like it's a lot of fun, and then you get to add it and continue to grow the small world that you're like trying to build to bring everybody into and enjoy.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's fun, but it's also it's a work in pro it's always a work in progress. It's always throwing things against the wall and see what's sticking. And it could be minute things. Like for example, we started wearing like varsity jackets
I saw
to the
that.
ring.
Oh, I love that,
Yeah.
by the way. I saw it and
Because
I fell in love instantly.
so because when we first were calling ourselves a king and queen, we were going more toward like your homecoming king and queen or your prom king and queen, like those popular kids in school that you wish they would get hit by a bus like Regina George did at the end of Mean Girls. But when especially in like chaotic wrestling and RWA and Fight Life, a lot of places where the production and the presentation is stands out from a lot of other places in the area. We said, hey, let's ditch the jackets and do something more regal, more royal, more darker, um so yeah, so it's always a work in progress, and it's always when you see inspiration or you see something that you like, hey, how can this work for me? How can I translate this into a wrestling character where I can tell a story within the confines of a squared circle, but also when the red light comes on the camera and I'm expected to verbalize my story, what can I use to better accentuate the point in the story I'm trying to tell?
No, but like I was telling you, like yeah, when I saw you guys' jackets, I was just an instant fan. It made me think about high school all over again, and I was like, yes, let's go. This is where we're at. But even though we dress cool and we have all this like production and stuff like that, we also take like some pretty gnarly bumps. And I'm just kind of curious because everyone has one of these, and I want to know yours. What's the worst bump you've taken?
Oh, the worst bump I've taken. Actually, it's most recent. You know, I, 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 I've taken a bunch, but the worst one was I superplexed Mike Grasso off the top of a cage. And that's both of us standing on the top of the cage. That was my ode to CM Punk and Jimmy Rave in the old Ring of Honor days. That hurt so badly. And that was a Sunday morning, regretting everything I've chose to do in my life previously. That was one of those that was the worst. That's 1A. There is a 1B. Danny Miles. This is back to like 09, 2010 years ago. We were wrestling in a Stairway to Hell match, which was pretty much a ladder match with weapons hanging from the ceiling. And it was the first time I ever got hit with a kendo stick. And Danny asked me, "Hey, you ever landed on a ladder?" I said no, and literally power bombs me on the ladder. He hit me with a "No trucks allowed" sign, and he hit me so hard I probably aged 4 years at that exact moment. But literally, it was probably the hardest I've ever been hit in my life. So those two are the ones that stand out the most. They all hurt, but those two are the probably the worst.
No, yeah. There's a lot of no in there for me. You had mentioned that, you're 34 and I'm 39. So I'm like, yeah, I don't have very many big bumps, but I like hearing about bump stories. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know about that.
It's funny because when my first go around, I was very I was like the cruiserweight guy, and as I got heavier, like sometimes it I really had to go away from that cruiserweight stock because I physically couldn't do it. So when I came back, I was given more opportunities to be spotlighted on higher parts of the show. And to me, my philosophy is the higher you up on the higher you are up on the card, the more that is expected of you based on where you're at in your story. Like obviously, I'm not going to superplex somebody off a cage in our very first match, but hey, if it's the blow off match and we're at the biggest show of that company's year, heck yeah, let's go balls to the wall. But I get reprimanded all the time where people always say, Tomas, BMT, do you realize how old you are? Maybe you don't have to do that. Let's leave that to the 20-something year olds. And I'm just like, I just don't have a switch. I'm either, you'll never get me a 50% in a match. So it's just, hey, if it's worth it, it's worth it. If it makes sense, if it advances the story and it benefits everyone involved, because ultimately I'm for the team. If everyone can walk out better than what they walked in with, and if I can contribute that by, doing what I do in the ring, hell yeah, let's go. I'm all for it.
I love that model though. That's actually really cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Uh, with that being said, though, what's one of the hardest lessons you've had to learn being in a business?
Humility, sir. You are. When my first couple years, I was always that kid, oh, you're going to go places. You have so much potential. I let that shit get to my head, and it essentially I drove myself out the business. Because I thought all these opportunities would come. And then when they didn't come, uh, or when they didn't come because I was getting comfortable and I was resting on my laurels and I was getting lazy, it's all about humility, man. That's why this is probably the most fun. This is the most fun I've ever had in my career, because I just want to go out there, and even if it's a little bit, even in the most minute way, I just want to help my opponent and help the younger people in the locker room and contribute. Um, so we're all in this together. We have a united goal, and that's to present the best form of professional wrestling that those people are paying to see, and convince them that we are the right form of entertainment to invest their hard-earned money in, month after month, week after week, whatever the consistency there is. But I couldn't do that without humbling myself and leaving the business for 6 years because my body gave out on me, and really turning my life around and coming back into this business and saying, how can I help the overall situation rather than just my own situation? Because I know I can handle myself, and I know when when push comes to shove, I know what I can do, what I can I know what my skill set is. So I don't ever lose sight of that, and I don't ever lose confidence in that. But being humble and wanting to help definitely is the biggest lesson I had to learn, because it's for the greater good, man. You know, one day I won't be doing this anymore. I'll be an old man who physically can't do this anymore. And I would love to say that when people mention me or mention my wife, that they say, hey, they really went out of their way to make sure that when I was done working with them, I came out a better person. Or when I was done working with them, I learned something new. They really went out of their way to be a support system for me, to to be a feedback, a reference for me, whatever the case is. I couldn't do that back in the day because I was a little shit. I was just a young, naive little shit. So um, I'm to stop rambling, it was all about humility. I had to humble myself, put myself in check, and really get back to basics, and just remember that I do this for the love. I do this for the love of the game, man. And I want other people to feel that same way that I feel. And if I can help them do that, then sign me up.
It's something that, because I've only been doing this for like, I'm going into my 5th year in January, and you said it right on the rip. And even for someone like me, right, getting in, I was like 34, 35, and people constantly telling me like, yeah, you're gonna go do things, you're gonna be the best, blah 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 blah. You got all this potential, and sometimes like you hear that and it swells you up, and then you're just like, yeah, they're gonna be doing these things for me. And then I remember like at one point, like I was supposed to be booked at this match and something was supposed to happen, but it didn't work out, and I got frustrated. And I brought it to my trainer, and my trainer was like, "Hey, man, I know these guys tell you like that you have a lot of potential, but remember, this business doesn't owe you anything." And I just remember that and just grind on it. And I was like, "You're right." And so I remember like just sitting down and then just grinding out like, this is what I'm gonna do, this is where I'm gonna go, these are the things I'm gonna see, this is what I want to go for, this is what I'm gonna work. If I don't work out here, I'm gonna go try somewhere else. I'm just gonna keep pushing myself and to grow into a different person that people are gonna, I don't want to say people are gonna like, but people are gonna, there's gonna be some respect that's gonna be earned in the business just because they know like I'm here to help make the business better. And it was just remembering that and understanding like, hey man, this business isn't gonna give you anything, and you have to work for everything. And I was like, all right, back on the mode that I was. When I was brought up in the military was that you're a grunt for life, like be a grunt for life and learn and continue to grind, and that's what I wanted to do. So when I it was a switch that was able for me to flip to go, all right, cool, I got this. I know exactly where we're going, what we're gonna do, and how we're gonna get there, and just lay the plan out, and then just kind of follow the plan all the way up. So I love the fact that you said that humility is the biggest driver for you now.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. It's I was raised by an Army Ranger father and my uncle who is a Marine. Mm. And it's just one of those things. My dad would always tell me the day you stop learning is the day you need to stop doing what you're doing. And the day that you think you know it all is the day you realize you know nothing. So that's really what I had to remind myself when I got back into wrestling, and bringing myself, humbling yourself and bringing yourself down back to reality is what I needed. And I have so much fun. You know, my life is very crazy. I go to school full time. I'm finishing up my degree. I have 6 children. I'm married. We run a household. We have careers. We wrestle. There's so much. But I never don't ever get excited or giddy when I'm driving to a show. I'm like, I, it came with age and maturity, but I feel the way that I felt when I was 16 years old in Connecticut watching Slick Wagner Brown versus Jay Lethal tear it up for 30 minutes in a gym in East Haven, Connecticut. I feel that same way again. It makes it more enjoyable, but it makes it more rewarding as well. So,
I had those moments too where it happens to me every match before I go out there, and people ask me all the time why, but I get butterflies like right before. So my opponent will go out first if I'm usually running as face, or if I'm running as a face, they go out, and as soon as they hit the curtain, I start getting butterflies, and I get super excited because that's
yeah.
like, they tell you like if you're not nervous, like you're, you know, what you
Oh, yeah.
doing, and so
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that feeling. And then if I know I'm going out first, like usually I say like a prayer, I'll get up, and then at that point, like I feel the butterflies attack, and then the first thing I say to myself is, "There you are," because I want the feeling. I'm like, "Oh, there's that feeling," and
Yeah.
then we go. So I always remind myself like, "Yo, butterflies are a good thing, and just enjoy that, right?" But people ask me, they're like, "Dude, you've been in a war zone. What do you mean? Why are you nervous?" I'm like, "Dog, like different areas of life bring different nerves," and I was like, "This is just one of them that I just love to feel." So I was like, I welcome that nervousness.
Absolutely. It's a welcome feeling. I always get kind of it weirds people out because when we're preparing in the back, I don't talk to people as soon as I get there. I have like this ritual where I get to the show, I socialize, I talk to everybody, I get myself set up, and my one rule is I have to watch the first match unless I'm in the first match, because that gives me the gauge for the audience that we have and the kind of environment that we're working in. And I always tell yeah, oh yeah, we'll get together, we'll get together. And it's honestly, it's not me thinking, hey, I think I'm better than you, or I'm not talking to you. It's a lot of nerves sometimes because you want to go out there and you want to set a standard, but you realize, oh, this is a very nerve-wracking situation, but it's good nerves. It's like if you don't feel those butterflies before you walk through a curtain, what are you doing this for? Like, we're throwing ourselves, we're purposely falling down on a platform that is made of metal, plywood, and very little padding.
Yeah.
There is something wrong with us. So if we are not enjoying what we're doing and we're not getting excited going into it, then what in the hell? We're a couple fries short of a Happy Meal. I mean, I'm not judging anybody, but it takes a special person to be a wrestler. So if you're not nervous and you're not enjoying this, please, you've got to explain to me what you're doing it for.
Yeah. I was like, because otherwise, man, like one of my trainers, my one trainer told me was like, if you're not nervous before your matches, like that means that you don't care, and if you don't care, then just kind of see your way out of the business.
Yep. If you- I forgot who told me the line, but they said it, the day you stop learning is the day you just stop. You know, that was something my father raised me on, but it was also something I was told early in my wrestling career by one of my mentors. And, you know, it was just, I was very fortunate younger in my career to be able to sit under a lot of learning trees with experienced guys who honestly didn't have to give me the time of day because my success didn't determine their forward progress or their didn't define their reputation. But one of those guys was Eddie Kingston. He really, you know, I got an opportunity to work him for 2 summers, and I used to drive from New Bedford, Massachusetts to the Bronx, back to whatever promotion in Connecticut we were working in, and then bring him back home, then drive back to New Bedford just so I could sit in the car and just pick his brain and talk to him. And he was the one who really honestly kind of allowed me to change my perspective on wrestling and not be in that bubble so much, but it also was kind of the seeds that were planted that made me enjoy it a bit more and really look at an understanding where it's like, hey, listen, there's no reason why you're walking through that curtain and you can't be excited every single time. But you know, wrestling is a part of the balance in your life. He would always tell me, hey, don't get stuck in the bubble. Like, you know, make sure every aspect of your life is good. So if you're good at home and you're good in the ring and you're excited going to shows and you're excited going to matches and you're nervous, that's good. Just don't throw off that balance. So, you know, it's still exciting for me. It's still exciting for me. And when I get those nerves, like you know, it pumps me up and it makes me excited. We wrestled the Shooter Boys last week, and they're a team. I think they've been doing this for like a year, maybe like 14 months or something. I know when
Yeah,
we
yeah,
first
yeah.
wrestled them back in June, they were at it for 8 months. And
Mm.
man, I was on the show. I was driving to the show and I was tapping my foot driving, and I'm just like, oh man, I'm so pumped for this. I can't wait because I know we're gonna go out there, and I know it's the end of our story. So I know we're gonna be telling our story on a different level than just a standard wrestling match. And my wife looks at me like, what's going on? I said, I'm just excited for this. I love doing this. Like I love being in my 30s, still getting excited, like, you know, when it was my first couple matches, but looking at it from a different mindset.
No, I love that. So this is what we're going to happen. I'm going to jump over to my favorite part of the 3 Count podcast, which is the 3 Count podcast 10 count questions. And Mr. BMT, I'm going to fire off 10 questions at you rapid fast, and whatever whatever your answer is, that's your answer.
Sweet. Sounds good to me. Let's go.
So I'm going to put on an imaginary timer for added pressure. Bing. And in the words of my favorite commentator, Mike Goldberg, here we go. SmackDown or Raw?
SmackDown.
Favorite movie?
The Crow. The original Crow.
Go. Okay. Pause on the timer. Not that it's actually up there. That's my favorite movie of all
Good.
time. Like
Best man died for his art. So yeah.
yeah, let's go. Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
Favorite cartoon?
Favorite cartoon, Hey Arnold.
Let's go. Waffles or pancakes?
Pancakes.
I feel like I know the answer to this one, but I'm just gonna say my favorite TV show.
You would think Game of Thrones, but it's Big Bang Theory.
Let's go. I like that too. Apple or Android?
Oh, geez, don't put no green bubbles in my damn iMessage.
Everybody keeps saying that, man. Team Android over here. The war continues. Favorite podcast?
I have a few. That's really hard. It's a tie for me between Click This, it's wrestling podcast. Click This with Kevin Nash and Sean Oliver, and um Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard. I love Conrad Thompson. I love his podcast. So
Yes, it's a great podcast. I love both those. Nominate one person you want to see on this podcast.
my wife.
Definitely. I feel like it has to be happen. Last but not least, my favorite question asked every single person who comes on this show. Favorite curse word?
Oh, fuck, definitely fuck.
I feel like it's necessary. Like that's just like it's a word. You can use it for every single anytime you need it. It's just there for you.
Yeah, I was raised in the Samuel L. Jackson era, so yeah.
Like it was funny too because like obviously both being dads, I have a bunch of people who like they make curse around my child and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, listen, her dad's former military, her mom is from Massachusetts. There ain't nothing that she ain't heard yet. So
Yeah. No,
let him.
yeah, my wife is not she's not a potty mouth, so especially when we're in the ring and I drop an expletive, I just look behind me and I just see her toes tapping and her eyebrows raising and like feel like she's gonna slap me in the hand with a ruler because or put a bar of soap in my mouth. But hey,
That's all right. You know what? Ralphie May made it, and so will I. I'm not worried about
exactly, we're fine.
it. So listen, those are all my questions I have for you. One, I want to also thank you for coming on the show and just talking business with us. But what I need you to do is to let our listeners and our viewers know where they can find you.
Oh, so you could find me on your normal socials. You can find me on Twitter and Insta. I'm never gonna call it X. The BMT88. You can find me BMT Brendan Michael Thomas on Facebook. You can find me all over New England. Come check out Rad Pro December 6th in Amesbury, Massachusetts at the Lafayette Club. December 8th, wrestling with Character in New Britain, Connecticut. And then Chaotic Wrestling in Tewksbury on December 13th. And then our EWA debut in Maine on December 14th. And then we're ending the year on New Year's Eve with Rad Pro Wrestling in Worcester. So yeah, I'm not a hard guy to find.
Bet. Well, he gave you all of his handles. He told you where you can even find him, if you ever want to go see one of the shows that he's on. So what does that mean? That means like every great part of a wrestling show, we got to take this home. Because this is the 3 Count Podcast presents Now Into Ring, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And being that I'm such a great shirt, but it's never about me. It's about who's into the ring. So who's into the ring? Yes, see him right there. The king of New England, the man, the myth, the legend, the most pristine BMT. And you guys know what to do. Tune into the next episode and be there, or you're literally following us on all of our social media platforms. You're checking us out on YouTube. You're subscribed to our YouTube channel. You're even listening to us on Spotify. You're checking us on Amazon Music. You're even listening to us on that dumb app with the stupid jingle that goes, iHeartRadio, or whatever it is. You're buying all of our merch on foryouwear.com, or you're even checking us out on prowrestlingtees.com. You're doing all that stuff. You're telling your mom about us, your dad about us, your uncles, your aunties, your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, your best friends, and your enemies, because we love haters too. You're doing all that stuff, or really you're just kind of waiting for this episode to end. You're waiting for that outro, and then you're choosing another episode to listen to. Kawaii. What's up? It is your friendly neighborhood Red Dog, and thank you for checking out this episode of the 3 Count Podcast. Whether that was Chaz Friends, Red Dog Friends, Damien Friends, The Films Lounge, Now Into the Ring, Now Entering 201, or Now Returning to the Ring, all those good episodes. You should really be liking, commenting, and even sharing this with your friends, family, whoever it may be. But what you all should be doing is checking us out on all of our social media platforms at 3 Count Pod, whether that's on IG, Twitch, you can check us out on Threads, whatever it may be. And if you go check us out on X, it is 3count_pod. Check us out on YouTube, as well as Facebook, on Rumble, on Apple Music, on Spotify, all those fun things. Tell your mom about us, your dad about us, your aunties, your uncles, your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, and your best friends and your enemies, because we love haters too. Do all that stuff, and then last but not least, buy our merch on foryouwear.com or prowrestlingtees.com. Kawaii.